Step out of the car, ma'am. Now. The officer's voice was sharp, cold, and commanding. He had his hand resting on the grip of his gun, his face tight with suspicion as he stared into the tinted window of the black Chevrolet Tahoe. Inside, a tall black woman in a sharp U.S. Army uniform sat calm, but clearly irritated. Her name tag read, Jen Thompson. 3 silver stars on her shoulders gleamed in the daylight. Her ribbons told a story of war zones and service. Her skin told a story the officer didn't care to hear. License and registration. Step out now, he barked again, ignoring the badge on her chest. I'm not getting out, she said coolly. You don't know who you're talking to. The cop, Officer Mitchell, didn't care. Step out of the vehicle, or I'm pulling you out myself. He reached for the door handle. I wouldn't do that, she said. Then slowly, she picked up her phone and made one call. One call. Put it down, the officer shouted, reaching for his gun. But she was already speaking. This is General Michelle Thompson. I need confirmation to my location. I'm being detained by a local officer. Yes, I'm still in uniform. Yes, please advise. And then silence. The officer froze. A second passed. Then 2. Then 3. Within minutes, everything changed. His radio crackled to life with a code he'd never heard before. His captain was yelling. Then came the black SUVs, the state troopers, and men in suits with earpieces. The look on Officer Mitchell's face melted from control to confusion to fear. And that's when she stepped out, her boots touching the pavement slow and proud, eyes locked with his. You really messed up, she said. But how did it come to this? Why was a decorated U.S. Army general being pulled over and treated like a criminal in broad daylight on a quiet suburban street in Maryland? Let's go back to how it all began. It was a sunny Thursday morning in Bethesda, Maryland. Birds chirped, lawn sprinklers hissed, and families went about their usual routines. General Michelle Thompson had just returned home after visiting a military base in North Carolina. She had driven through the night and made it to her quiet neighborhood just as the sun was rising. She wasn't planning to be out for long, just a quick drive to pick up some dog food for her golden retriever, Max, and maybe grab coffee. She still wore her uniform. She didn't plan to stop anywhere important, but after 32 years of service, Michelle Thompson had earned the right to wear those stars wherever and whenever she pleased. At the same time, Officer Rick Mitchell was beginning his morning patrol. He was known in the area, not for kindness, but for being intense. His record was clean, but people whispered about the way he looked at black drivers. How he asked too many questions. How he once followed a black teenager 3 blocks, just because he looked lost. Michelle pulled into the parking lot of a small pet store. She stepped inside, bought a big bag of dry food, and came back out. That's when Officer Mitchell saw her. A black woman in uniform, driving a government-tagged black SUV. Something about it didn't sit right with him. He waited, then followed her as she pulled out. A block later, he hit the lights. Michelle glanced in the mirror. Seriously, she muttered. She pulled over calmly, keeping her hands visible on the wheel. She didn't reach for anything. She didn't move quickly. She just waited. The officer approached, slow and heavy-footed. He didn't say hello. He didn't smile. License and registration. Michelle turned to look at him. Why did you pull me over? Suspicious vehicle in a residential neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. License and registration. She sighed. My military ID is right there in my bag. May I reach for it? He stiffened. Slowly. She did exactly as told. Handed him her ID. He looked at it. Frowned. Where'd you get this? Michelle blinked. I earned it. I'm General Michelle Thompson. U.S. Army. He scoffed. You expect me to believe that? Michelle's hands gripped the steering wheel. Look, officer. I'm not going to keep entertaining this. Either tell me what this is about, or I'll be on my way. Wrong move. The officer reached for his belt. Step out. Now. I'm not stepping out of my car. I've done nothing wrong. He reached for the door. That's when Michelle made the call. Back to the present. Within moments, the quiet Maryland street had turned into a federal lockdown. 2 unmarked black SUVs sped in. State troopers blocked off the road. One agent flashed credentials at Officer Mitchell so fast, he didn't even catch the agency. The man barked one command. Stand down. Mitchell stammered. I didn't, she wasn't. I didn't know. No, the agent cut in. You didn't. The radio on Mitchell's shoulder buzzed again. His captain's voice was frantic. Mitchell, what the hell did you just do? Stand down. Do you know who that is? Mitchell stepped back, eyes wide. as Michelle finally opened her door. She stepped out slowly, head high, calm. Then she walked straight past him. The federal agents surrounded her like she was the president herself. She nodded once to one of them. "Take him in." The agent turned. "On what grounds, ma'am?" She looked at Mitchell. "You'll find them." But before the handcuffs clicked, something even more shocking happened, something no one saw coming. "That's where we leave it for now." A sharp crack split the air like lightning. One of the federal agents standing behind General Thompson suddenly dropped to one knee, gripping his earpiece, eyes wide in shock. "Ma'am," he called out urgently, "you need to come with me. Now." Everyone froze. Even Officer Mitchell, still standing with his hands up, turned to look. The agent leaned in close to the general and whispered something none of the others could hear. Her face didn't change, still calm, still composed, but her eyes narrowed, just slightly. Without a word, she turned back to Mitchell. "You're lucky," she said. "For now." And just like that, she walked away with the agents, stepping into one of the black SUVs. Officer Mitchell stood frozen on the side of the road, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his neck. He'd just racially profiled and tried to arrest a U.S. Army general. And now something bigger was clearly happening. Something he didn't understand. Something way above his pay grade. He wasn't sure what scared him more, what he'd just done, or what was about to come next. Earlier that morning, before any of this had exploded into a street-side scandal, Michelle Thompson's day started like most others. She woke up at 5 a.m. sharp. No alarm needed. It was habit, discipline, routine. She fed Max, her golden retriever, laced up her running shoes, and went for a 3-mile jog through her quiet neighborhood. Kids on bikes waved at her. A man walking his beagle smiled and said, "Good morning, General." Everyone knew her around here, not just for her service, but for how involved she was in the community. Every Thanksgiving, she hosted a dinner at the local VA for homeless veterans. Every summer, she sponsored scholarships for girls interested in joining the military. But Michelle had learned long ago that no matter how many medals you earned, or how many salutes you received, the world still saw her skin before her stars. She returned home from her jog, showered quickly, and put on her uniform. She had a video conference with the Pentagon at noon, but she had time to run a few errands before then. Max needed food, and she was running low on coffee pots. She grabbed her military bag, keys, and headed out. She didn't notice the squad car tucked behind the trees a block away. Officer Mitchell was having a slow morning. He liked it that way. He always said, "Quiet days are good days." But inside, he hated the boredom. He sipped from his thermos, flipped through radio chatter, and watched cars pass. Then he saw the black SUV. Tinted windows. Government tags. Black driver. He didn't think. He just started following. She wasn't speeding. She didn't swerve. Nothing was out of place. But something in him insisted she didn't belong there. He hit the lights. The traffic stop began as routine. But when he saw the woman's uniform, it irritated him. Something about the confidence in her voice, the calm in her eyes, it got under his skin. She didn't sound scared. She didn't tremble. She wasn't submissive the way he expected. It wasn't the uniform that made him suspicious. It was the fact that a black woman wore it so proudly. That's when things began to escalate. He asked her to step out. She refused. He reached for his belt. She reached for her phone. That one call changed everything. Back in the SUV, General Thompson sat silent, her mind running through the whisper the agent had given her moments before. "Ma'am, it's urgent. We have reason to believe someone leaked your location." She didn't answer right away, just looked ahead. She knew what this meant. She knew enemies didn't always wear uniforms. They arrived at a secure location within 20 minutes, a federal safe house just outside D.C. The building looked like an abandoned warehouse from the outside, but inside, it was packed with security systems, analysts, and intel screens. She stepped into the operations room. Several officers stood up at attention. "Ma'am." She nodded, then went straight to the head of the table. "What do we know?" A young analyst with nervous hands pulled up a screen. About an hour ago, encrypted chatter started bouncing off darknet forums. Your location was mentioned directly, down to the intersection. It was buried in coded messages, but our AI flagged it. Michelle narrowed her eyes. "And how many people have access to my GPS route outside of military command?" "3, ma'am. All cleared through top Pentagon security." She didn't like that answer. "Then someone's feeding intel to someone they shouldn't," she said. "Find them." "Yes, ma'am." She stepped aside to make another call. This time, it wasn't to the Pentagon. It was to her old friend, Marcus Wynn, ex-Army intelligence and now an independent contractor who specialized in digging up things that weren't meant to be found. "Hey," she said, "I need a trace. Someone leaked my route. I need to know who." There was a long pause on the other end. "You're telling me someone tried to set you up, and Officer Ricky Boy just happened to pull you over at that exact moment?" "That's what I'm telling you. I'm on it." She hung up, exhaled, and for the first time that day, allowed herself to feel the weight of what just happened. That stop wasn't just about racism. It may have been the tip of something much darker. And as if on cue, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered. A low, disguised voice came through. "You should have stayed out of the public eye, General. Some people don't like your kind in power." Click. She stared at the screen. The air in the room got colder. And right then, back at the local police station, Officer Mitchell was facing his own storm. His captain had ordered him into the office. He sat sweating in the interrogation room as internal affairs began pulling his bodycam footage, his logs, and his dashcam video. "Why'd you pull her over?" the investigator asked. "She was suspicious," Mitchell said. "Government SUV. Tinted windows. It didn't look right." "Didn't look right," the man repeated slowly. "So a black woman in a government SUV didn't look right." Mitchell shifted in his seat. "I didn't mean it like that. Save it." Behind the mirror, two more men watched the feed. One in a Pentagon uniform, the other with a badge that didn't belong to any local agency. "What do you think?" the Pentagon officer asked. "I think he's dirty," the other replied. "Or stupid. Maybe both." But before they could say anything more, a red alert blinked across the screen. "Security breach. Level 3. Safe house compromised." At the safe house, alarms blared. Doors slammed shut. Red lights flashed. An agent ran to General Thompson. "Ma'am, we've been breached. We need to move now." Before she could ask how, a loud bang echoed outside the building. The windows trembled. Michelle turned sharply. "Give me a vest," she ordered. "And a weapon." This wasn't just a racial incident anymore. It was a full-blown attack. But who was behind it? And how did they know where to find her again? A second explosion rocked the building. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Agents shouted, scrambling for gear, escorting personnel through secured hallways as the fire suppression system kicked in. Red lights flashed wildly, bathing the steel walls in an eerie glow. General Thompson didn't flinch. She stood still as two agents slipped a bulletproof vest over her uniform, then handed her a standard-issue sidearm. Her eyes were laser-focused. Calm. Controlled. She checked the clip. Fully loaded. "What's our exit?" she barked, voice cutting clean through the chaos. "Back corridor, ma'am. Leads to a service tunnel under the Potomac. We have a convoy waiting topside once you're through." She nodded. "Let's move." The group of 5 agents flanked her in a tight diamond formation, guiding her quickly through the inner halls of the safe house. Alarms blared. Smoke hissed from a ventilation duct. Somewhere in the distance, a third blast sounded, but it was farther away this time. A distraction. "They're trying to drive us toward an ambush," she said. One of the agents, a younger one, face pale with nerves, glanced at her. "Ma'am, how would they even know about the tunnel?" Her jaw tightened. "They're getting intel from the inside." They reached a locked steel door. One of the agents used his thumbprint, I scan, and code to open it. The door hissed open. The tunnel beyond was dark and narrow, lit only by emergency strip lights running low along the concrete floor. They began moving. The air grew cooler. Damp. Their boots echoed sharply as they hurried through the narrow passage. Suddenly, click. Michelle stopped mid-step. "Wait," she said. "Back." She slowly looked down. Her boot was inches from a thin wire stretching across the floor. "Tripwire." "Trap," she whispered. The lead agent cursed under his breath. "Ma'am, someone knew you'd use this exit." Michelle slowly knelt, examining the wire, eyes narrowed. "Not just someone," she said. "Someone trained." She looked back down the corridor they had come from. "If I were them, I'd have backup posted on the surface. This isn't an attack. This is a capture mission." The agent beside her looked confused. "Why capture, ma'am? Why not kill?" She looked at him grimly. "Because dead soldiers don't talk." They rerouted. There was another exit, an older access shaft used only in worst-case scenarios. As they moved quickly toward it, Michelle's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She answered it without breaking stride. The same voice as before, cold and distorted, filled the speaker. "You're quick, General, but not quick enough." Then static. Then silence. She didn't say a word, just slipped the phone back into her pocket. They climbed the emergency shaft. When they reached the top, a large steel hatch blocked the way out. One of the agents pushed it open just an inch, then pulled back fast. "Snipers," he whispered. Michelle didn't hesitate. Flashbang. The agent nodded and pulled one from his gear. With practiced hands, he popped the pin and tossed it upward. Boom. A white-hot flash of light and sound cracked the air above. The hatch burst open. Michelle and the team surged up and out like a tidal wave. She crouched low, scanning the treeline. Two men in tactical gear scrambled, temporarily blinded. They didn't wear insignia. One of them raised a weapon. Michelle fired first. One shot. Two shots. The man dropped. The second fled into the woods. But not before she saw the tattoo on the side of his neck. A black chest knight. Her eyes narrowed. She knew that symbol. It belonged to a private military group that had been officially shut down 5 years ago. Shadow Guard. Except apparently, they weren't so shut down after all. Back at the local police station, Officer Mitchell sat in silence. He was no longer just under review. He was under investigation. His body cam footage had already made its way up the chain of command. The Department of Defense had requested access. The Pentagon had eyes on him. And that's when the knock came. Two men in gray suits entered. No badges. No names. "Officer Mitchell," one of them said. "You need to come with us." He looked between them. "Am I being arrested?" "No. You're being debriefed." That word made his stomach twist. He stood slowly, trying to act like he wasn't scared. They led him through the back hallway. Not out the front door. Not to a squad car. To a black van waiting in the alley. Inside, there were no seats. Just a bench and a single screen on the wall. The doors closed behind him. The screen blinked on. General Thompson's face appeared. "Not live, recorded." "Officer Mitchell," she said calmly. "You may be wondering why you're here. I'll make it simple. You pulled over the wrong person today. That much is obvious. But this isn't about your bad judgment anymore. This is about what you didn't realize you were part of." His face went pale. The screen went dark. And then, a voice came from a speaker overhead. "We believe you were used. You were a pawn in something much larger. And now, we need to know who moved you." At the safe zone, Michelle was now debriefing a new team. Shadow Guard was shut down after the incident in Kandahar. "Or so we were told," she said, tapping the chalkboard beside her. "But somehow, they've resurfaced." She drew a circle around the chest knight symbol. "They're back. And they want me." "Why you, ma'am?" an agent asked. Michelle looked him in the eyes. "Because 5 years ago, I buried their last leader in Afghanistan." A deep silence followed. And then the door burst open. A breathless analyst ran in. "General, there's been a leak. Again. Coordinates to this facility just went live on the dark net." Michelle stood slowly. "Then it's official." She grabbed her gear. "They're not just targeting me anymore. They're starting a war." The wind howled through the night as black clouds rolled over the horizon. Rain began to fall in slow, heavy drops, drumming against the roof of the safe house. Inside, General Thompson moved with quiet urgency, her boots clicking against the polished concrete floors. Her team was already mobilizing, packing up gear, shredding documents, wiping hard drives clean. The second breach in less than 12 hours confirmed what she had feared. There was a mole inside the Pentagon. Someone high enough to have access to secure locations. Someone feeding information directly to Shadow Guard. She knew time was running out. "All right, listen up," she said, stepping into the command room. "We're not waiting to be sitting ducks. We move now. Airlift in 20. We're heading to Site Echo." One of the younger agents looked confused. "Ma'am? Site Echo? I thought that place was shut down years ago." Michelle stared him down. "It was. But I never turned in the keys." As her team moved out, Michelle made a quick call to Marcus Wen. "I'm patching into a secure line now," he said, his voice crackling. "I ran the traces like you asked. The ping that leaked your coordinates didn't come from a foreign network. Where did it come from?" He hesitated. "Langley." She blinked. "CIA. Or someone inside it. I traced a mass data jump routed through one of their dormant servers. Someone's using their old network like a ghost highway." Michelle's jaw clenched. "I want to name Marcus." "You'll get one." "But Michelle." "What?" "They're not just watching you. They're hunting you. And they're not planning on bringing you in alive." She didn't flinch. "Let them try." Outside, Twin Black Hawk helicopters chopped through the storm clouds as the team loaded up. Michelle climbed aboard the lead chopper and pulled on a headset. "Side Echo, here we come," the pilot said. She nodded. Echo was buried deep in the Appalachian Mountains, an old Cold War outpost that Michelle had used during Black Ops missions years ago. No one outside a small circle even knew it still existed. If Shadow Guard found them there, then the leak went deeper than she ever imagined. Meanwhile, back at the black van where Officer Mitchell sat trembling, the interrogators were getting more aggressive. "We need to know exactly what was said to you before you stop the general," the voice through the speaker demanded. "I told you already," Mitchell shouted. "Nobody told me anything. I saw a black SUV with tinted windows. Looked suspicious. That's it." Silence. Then the speaker crackled again. "What about the gas station?" He blinked. "What gas station? You stopped for coffee 10 minutes before you tailed the general. Surveillance shows a man in a blue hat approached you. You two talked for 26 seconds. I don't remember that," Mitchell stammered. "It was just a guy asking for directions." "No. He was planting a suggestion. Testing how far you'd go." The screen blinked on again. It showed the man in the blue hat. Face pixelated, but the outline was clear. Then it switched. Another image. The same man, standing beside a known Shadow Guard operative. Mitchell went white. "Oh God," he whispered. I didn't know. "Now you do," the voice said. "So you'll help us, Officer Mitchell. Or you'll go down as a co-conspirator in an attempted assassination of a U.S. Army general." He was trapped. But for the first time, he was willing to do the right thing. In the sky, lightning flashed near the rotor blades as the helicopters cut through the storm. "Ma'am, we're 5 minutes from Site Echo," the pilot called. Michelle checked her watch. She could feel something in her gut. Something tight. Wrong. As the ground came into view, so did the outline of the base. A slab of concrete nestled in a deep valley, half hidden by forest. They touched down, but something was off. The perimeter lights were already on. Michelle raised her hand. "Weapons ready. Form a perimeter." They advanced toward the entrance. The steel doors that should have been sealed were cracked open. No one had touched this facility in nearly a decade, and yet someone had gotten here first. She raised her rifle. "Eyes up. We sweep in pairs. Nothing gets overlooked." They entered. The lights flickered on, one by one, down a long concrete hallway. A shadow moved at the far end. "Hold," she shouted. The team froze. The shadow stepped forward slowly, hands raised. It was a man. Late 40s. Military haircut. Clean boots. No insignia. "General Thompson," he said calmly. "I've been waiting." Her grip tightened on the trigger. "Identify yourself." The man smiled. "You know me. You just don't remember yet." Behind her, an agent whispered, "Is that?" Michelle's mind raced. The voice was familiar. The face too. But it couldn't be. He was supposed to be dead. The man smiled wider. "Shadow Guard never died. We just changed our face." Then the hallway exploded with gunfire. Bullets screamed through the corridor. Sparks flew off steel walls. Concrete cracked and lights burst, plunging parts of the hallway into flickering chaos. "Down!" General Thompson yelled. She dove sideways, sliding against the floor as one of her agents went down with a grunt. The man who had called himself Shadow Guard didn't flinch. He walked calmly through the smoke as if the bullets weren't even for him. Michelle fired 3 precise shots. He vanished behind a blast door. "Fall back. Defensive position," she commanded. 2 agents dragged the injured soldier behind a reinforced wall as the rest set up a defensive line. The hallway echoed with footsteps. Multiple hostiles were advancing. "Infrared," someone shouted. Michelle flipped her goggles down. Through the green haze, she saw them. At least 6 figures moving through the smoke. Tactical gear. Silencers. No government patches. "Not amateurs," she muttered. She knelt beside her wounded agent, placing pressure on the bleeding shoulder. "You hold this. You're not dying today." The agent nodded weakly, teeth clenched in pain. Michelle tapped her calm. "Ghost team, report. Are you in position?" A voice crackled in. "Affirmative. Roof secured. We see 3 tangos circling from the west ridge. Should we engage?" "Negative. Hold until I give the order. We're not showing our full hand yet." She turned to her ground team. Time to remind them who they're messing with. Back at the black interrogation van, Officer Mitchell was now deep in it. On the monitor, the mysterious agency contact, a man with a voice smooth as glass and sharp as razors, was laying out what Shadow Guard really was. They're not just mercenaries, the voice explained. They're disavowed, former U.S. operatives, trained in the same facilities as your best and brightest. Except they took a different oath. One to money, power, silence. And you, Officer Mitchell, were their first domino. They wanted to test the system. Test us. You stopped General Thompson not because you're one of them, but because they knew your pattern, your fear, your bias. All they had to do was push. Mitchell swallowed hard. So what happens now? The screen flicked to a live feed. Michelle's team, pinned in the hallway of Site Echo. Smoke. Gunfire. Now, the voice said. Now you help us stop what you helped start. Back at the site, Michelle reloaded as gunfire rattled like thunder through the stone belly of the base. But then, silence. No footsteps. No shouting. Just stillness. She signaled her team forward. They crept past the shattered lights, over shell casings, rifles aimed. Suddenly, a click. Back, she shouted. But it was too late. Gas hissed from the vents. Thick, white, blinding. Goggles. Masks, someone yelled. Michelle pulled hers on just as one of her men dropped to the floor coughing. Another stumbled into a wall. Then, out of the smoke, came the sound of boots. Dozens. Michelle fired blindly at the movement, controlled, precise, not wasting a single shot. Then came a voice. You can't win this, General. It was him again. The man in the hallway. You're alone. Outnumbered. And no one's coming. She crouched behind a control panel. Wrong, she said aloud. I don't need anyone else. Just me and the truth. She activated her comm again. Marcus, are you online? I'm here. I need lights. All of them. Flash emergency protocol. You're inside Site Echo, Michelle. That tech is old. I don't care. Patch it. Shock and blind mode. Give me a chance. There was a pause. Then, patching now. A deep hum started in the walls. Then a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Boom. All lights exploded in brilliant white, followed by a deafening siren pulse. The Shadow Guard operatives reeled back, grabbing their faces, blinded. Michelle sprang forward, rifle blazing. 1 down. 2. 3. She moved like a ghost through their chaos, sweeping the area. The gas began to thin. Her team regrouped. Secure the hallway, she shouted. They moved like clockwork. Tight formations. Zero hesitation. The intruders began retreating, but one man was left behind. Coughing. Unarmed. Michelle kicked his weapon away and pinned him to the wall. Who sent you? She demanded. The man laughed, blood in his teeth. You already know. He's not finished. Who? The man in the hallway? The ghost. He smiled through the pain. We call him Bishop. Then he slumped, unconscious. Michelle stood, heart pounding. She turned to her team. Pack up. Move out. We're leaving this tomb behind. As the team exited Site Echo, 2 stealth drones circled high above, transmitting video to an unknown server. At an undisclosed location, in a room lit only by monitors, a man watched. He wore no insignia, no medals, no name tag, just a single chess piece tattoo on his neck. A black knight. He watched Michelle step into the evac chopper. And he smiled. Let the game begin. The rotors roared overhead as the Black Hawk lifted from the valley, cutting through the Appalachian mist. Inside the chopper, General Michelle Thompson sat silent, her hands still tight around her rifle. Blood speckled her sleeves, some of it her own team's, some from the enemy. Casualty report, she said without looking up. 2 injured. Her second in command, Agent Fields, replied. 1 critical. Nokia. The rest are intact. She nodded, lips pressed into a firm line. Where are we heading? Fields asked, wiping sweat and soot from his brow. Michelle took a breath. We're not going back to D.C. Not until I figure out how deep this goes. Take us to Grid Point Kilo Bravo. Fields looked at her, surprised. Kilo Bravo? That's off books. Exactly. An hour later, the helicopter touched down on a forest clearing with no lights, no markers, just a hidden elevator shaft built into the earth. It was a decommissioned Cold War surveillance station, stripped bare of funding years ago. Michelle had kept it quiet. Quiet was survival. Her boots hit the damp ground. She turned to her team. We're not safe anywhere above ground. No phones, no signals. We go dark, until we know who Bishop is. She paused, looking around at her exhausted team. They're not coming after a general anymore. They're coming after the chain of command itself. If they break me, they break everything. Meanwhile, back in DC, Marcus Wynn sat in a dark tech lab lit by 6 monitors. On one screen, he replayed the tunnel ambush frame by frame. He froze it, zoomed in. There, among the Shadow Guard attackers, was a man with gray gloves and a scar just beneath his eye. Wynn leaned back, expression hardening. "I know you," he muttered. He clicked through old classified files until he found the match. Codename, Bishop. Real name, unknown. Last seen, 2017, in Yemen, during an off-the-books raid that ended in the death of 4 CIA assets and the disappearance of a $500 million weapons cache. Michelle had led that raid. Marcus cursed under his breath. He dialed Michelle through a hidden military frequency. She picked up. "You found him?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "But you're not going to like it." "I never do." "He's ex-CIA, disavowed. Thought to be dead. Real smart. Real quiet. He's got a personal vendetta. And a long memory." There was a beat of silence on the line. Michelle finally said, "Then I was right." "Right about what?" Marcus asked. "They're not just after me. They're building something. Something bigger." Back in the underground facility, Michelle gathered her team. They sat around a dusty metal table while she laid out a map. "Bishop's been 10 steps ahead of us because he has access to something or someone." She circled 3 names on a separate sheet. Each name was a high-level Pentagon official. Each had signed off on closing Site Echo. Each had connections to black-budget programs. All 3 are in the Pentagon's Secure Communications Council. If someone leaked my movement from that level. Fields looked up, brow furrowed. "That means Shadow Guard has someone inside the Pentagon." Michelle nodded slowly. "And if Bishop is running ops, then he's doing it with money and silence. And if we don't stop him, he won't stop with me." Back at Langley, inside a heavily restricted operations center, Bishop stood in the shadows of a private control room. Screens flickered in front of him, satellite feeds, secure transmissions, intercepted messages. One of his men entered, lowering his head in deference. "She survived Site Echo." Bishop said nothing at first. He stared at the screen showing Michelle stepping out of the helicopter into the forest. "She's smarter than they said." "Should we move on phase 2? The man asked. Bishop finally spoke. "No. We let her come to us." He turned toward a screen showing 3 civilian targets. "Time to take something from her. Something she can't replace." At the underground hideout, Michelle finally allowed herself a moment alone. She stepped into the dim hallway, leaned back against the cold concrete wall, and let out a slow breath. The adrenaline was gone. Her ribs ached. Her head throbbed. Then a faint sound, ding. An old elevator bell. She froze. That elevator hadn't worked in years. Her hand went to her weapon. She moved silently down the hallway toward the sound. Another ding. She turned the corner. The elevator door was cracked open, and on the ground, sitting upright against the far wall, was a teddy bear. Max's teddy bear. From her home. The bear was missing an eye. One she'd stitched herself years ago. There was a note pinned to its chest. "You left the door open." Michelle's hands trembled as she picked it up. Bishop had been in her house. Maybe even still was. And worse, he had Max. Her golden retriever. Her only family. Her face hardened. This wasn't tactical anymore. This was personal. 3 hours later, in a warehouse on the outskirts of Baltimore, Bishop stood beside Max, who was locked in a kennel, unharmed but scared. He knelt beside the dog, petting it gently. "She'll come," he said softly. "She always does. That's the problem with heroes." He looked at the camera. Always predictable. He smiled, then turned to his men. Begin phase 2. Rain poured steadily over Baltimore, drumming against warehouse rooftops and washing through the gutters like a slow-moving tide. Inside one of those warehouses, deep behind reinforced walls and a digital firewall thick enough to fool government satellites, Bishop was orchestrating his masterpiece. He stood before a steel table, hands calmly resting on either side of a glowing screen. Video feeds blinked, street cameras, traffic lights, airport gates, even a live feed from a gas station a few miles outside of DC. Behind him, Max whimpered softly in the corner of his kennel. Bishop didn't react. Instead, he pressed a button. A slow ripple of blue lines flowed across a digital map, military routes, convoy schedules, encrypted Pentagon chatter. Phase 2 wasn't just about baiting General Thompson. It was about breaking the system that protected her. Back underground in Grid Point Kilo Bravo, Michelle stared at the stuffed bear resting on the concrete table. The single, Stitched, I seemed to watch her in silence. "He's in my house," she said finally. Her voice was low, but filled with restrained rage. Marcus's voice crackled over the encrypted channel. "I checked the security footage from your property. Nothing. Wiped clean. Every log, every backup, even the cloud. This guy doesn't just slip in. He disappears." She stood. "Not this time." She turned to Agent Fields. "I need a small team. Quiet. No comms. We're going to Baltimore." Fields raised an eyebrow. "That's a huge grid to search." "He's not hiding. He wants me to find him." She glanced at the bear again. That wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. The next night, under cover of darkness and wearing civilian gear, Michelle and a 3-person strike unit drove a nondescript van through the heart of Baltimore. Marcus had traced a strange surge of data that bounced between a shuttered textile factory and a decommissioned port dock. Michelle stared out the window, fingers twitching slightly over her pistol. She hadn't told the others about the dog. This was bigger than Max. But it started with Max. And if Bishop had crossed that line, she was ready to burn his entire world down. Inside the warehouse, Bishop sat across from a man in a Department of Energy jacket. The man looked terrified. I gave you the grid. I gave you the codes. You said my family. They're safe," Bishop interrupted, smiling coolly. "Because you did your job." He leaned closer. "But here's the truth." He tapped a photo on the table. It was of Michelle. She's not just an officer. She's an idea. You know what happens when ideas get too powerful. The man shook his head. They make people brave. And bravery, my friend, is contagious. He stood. "And I'm the cure." 3 blocks away, Michelle's van rolled to a stop. She lifted binoculars and scanned the skyline. "There," she said, pointing to the 3rd warehouse from the left. "Thermals show low consistent heat. Controlled climate. No lights. That's where I'd put a data center if I didn't want it found." Fields nodded. "We breach silent or loud." Michelle checked her pistol. "We go silent." The team split. 2 flanked the rear while Michelle and Fields approached the main side. They moved with the calm precision of people who had done this too many times before. At the door, Michelle placed a small, silent charge. Click. FSSSSSSS. Thud. The door fell open like paper. She moved in first. The interior was a maze of crates, wires, and humming servers. Michelle swept the hallway until she reached a control room and froze. There on a monitor was Max. Caged. Whimpering. Alive. Relief punched her in the chest, but it didn't last. Because next to Max on the screen was a countdown. 3:24. 3:23. 3:22. What the hell? Fields came up beside her. He's going to detonate something? No, Michelle said, narrowing her eyes. It's a broadcast countdown. She pointed to the text at the top. Operation Truth, going live. She grabbed the headset lying on the table. Marcus, he's about to stream something. Get me eyes on every secure channel. Military, civilian encrypted. He's planning a public drop. What kind of drop? Marcus asked, already typing. Michelle stared at the screen. Something big enough to shift public trust. Elsewhere in the city, Bishop stood inside a separate server room, uploading encrypted files. Military blueprints, mission logs, covert documents, emails, all marked, top secret, compartmentalized access only. As the data uploaded, he turned to a mounted camera. He straightened his jacket, smiled, and pressed record. At that exact moment, Michelle found a secondary screen in the warehouse that had been set to begin broadcasting his message globally. She clicked the interface. The files ready to publish weren't just sensitive, they were twisted. Doctored emails, edited video clips, falsified military orders with Michelle's signature on them. It was a smear campaign, an information bomb designed to make it look like she had covered up war crimes. Fields stepped forward, horrified. This would destroy everything. Your record, your stars, the chain of command, the whole damn military. Michelle's hand hovered over the keyboard. Help me cut the upload. Together, they worked frantically, blocking IP addresses, routing data dumps into dead servers. Marcus, we need a kill code for this system now. Marcus's voice was panicked. You don't have time for me to write a new one. But I can corrupt it. I can glitch it. It'll leave a trace, but it'll crash the system before the upload finishes. Do it. 3, 2, 1. The monitors flickered. The countdown froze at 0:01. Then the entire system crashed. Sparks shot from a server rack. Smoke billowed from the walls. Michelle looked at Fields. He's not going to stop after this. Then a door at the back creaked open. She raised her weapon. And from the shadows, Max came trotting forward. Dirty, tired, but unharmed. Michelle dropped to one knee, arms wide. Max ran into her, tail wagging furiously, whimpering with joy. She buried her face in his fur, breathing in deep. But the moment was brief. A voice echoed from a speaker nearby. Bishop, you're good, General. Real good. But you just missed the real upload. She turned toward the speaker. What upload? Phase 3, he said calmly. The one that doesn't need truth. Just fear. And with that, every monitor in the building lit up with a grainy video. A false flag. Footage of an upcoming military convoy, overlaid with a doctored voice recording ordering a strike on U.S. soil, allegedly from Michelle Thompson herself. Michelle's eyes widened. Oh my God, he's going to start a war. Thunder rolled low across the city as General Thompson stared at the screens, her face lit by the flickering glow of the fake footage. On every monitor, her own image played back in distorted frames. A fabricated voice, her voice, said, Initiate Red Star Protocol. Full domestic strike authorization. Targets, Chicago, Atlanta, Houston. And beneath the video, a flashing message. Live feed. To be released in 9 minutes and 42 seconds. Michelle's blood ran cold. This is it, she whispered. This isn't just about me anymore. This is the kill shot. Fields looked at her, stunned. You think people will believe it? Absolutely, she said. In an age of deep fakes and rage clicks, they won't even wait to ask questions. If this video goes public, cities will panic. The country will fracture before noon. Max growled softly beside her, as if he could feel the tension. She stood. Marcus. Status. Marcus's voice came through, static heavy. They've activated a shadow relay. Military satellites are being piggybacked by a rogue frequency. I can't cut it from here. You need to stop the upload physically. It's running off a mobile terminal somewhere else in the city. Michelle turned to Fields. We find that terminal. Now. At that exact moment, Bishop sat calmly in the back of a moving black van, eyes on a satellite uplink mounted to the roof. A small laptop beside him showed the final pieces of the upload transferring through encrypted channels. His right-hand operative, a woman known only as Jinx, leaned in. Military's sniffing around. If they trace the signal, they won't, Bishop cut in. And even if they do, they're too slow. When this video hits the net, it won't matter what's true. Only who's blamed first. He leaned back, watching the digital progress bar climb to 94%. Time to finish what we started in Yemen. Marcus's trace pinged a new signal burst near Camden Yards, downtown Baltimore. The rogue uplink wasn't just mobile, it was moving. Fast. Convoy, Michelle said, checking her watch. He's sending the upload from a moving van. Smart. Can't get locked on by drones that way. She looked at her team. We split. 2 teams. Fields, you take Max to safety. Marcus will guide you. Me? I'm going hunting. With no time for subtlety, Michelle stole a black motorcycle from a nearby lot and took off into the night. The rain had picked up again, slicking the streets and turning the roads into sheets of glass. But she leaned into it, weaving through traffic, chasing a blinking red dot Marcus had sent to her HUD. Target is 5 blocks ahead. Black Ford panel van. No plates, Marcus relayed. She sped up. The city lights blurred. The wind tore past her helmet. Then she saw it. The van. 3 lanes ahead. Michelle veered hard, jumped a median, and closed in. The driver saw her too late. She pulled up alongside the van, reached for her sidearm. Bang! Gunfire erupted from the passenger window. Glass shattered around her. Michelle ducked low, heart pounding. She fired back, twice. One bullet pinged off the side mirror, the other embedded into the rear tire. Thump, thump, thump. The van jerked, swerved, but didn't stop. Instead, it plowed through a barricade and turned sharply into a deserted tunnel beneath the train yard. Michelle followed without hesitation. Inside the tunnel, sparks flew from the walls as the van scraped against concrete. Michelle raced behind it, firing one shot into the brake lights. Then she saw her chance. A fallen scaffold across the tracks. She gunned the throttle, hit the ramp, and soared. The motorcycle flew through the air like something out of a movie. Crash. She landed squarely on top of the van. The force bent the roof inward. Inside, Bishop looked up, grinning. She never quits, he said. He flipped a switch. The van screeched to a stop. Michelle held on tight. Then, smoke bomb. A hatch popped open. A grenade rolled onto the roof. Poof. Blinding smoke. Michelle coughed, rolled off the side. And Bishop stepped out. Black combat gear. Calm as ever. He aimed a weapon straight at her. I should have killed you years ago. Michelle raised her pistol. You should have tried harder. Bang. Bang. Gunfire exploded in both directions. Michelle rolled behind a cement pillar. Bishop ducked behind the van. Their gunfight lit up the tunnel with sparks and fury. Michelle clipped his shoulder. He grunted but didn't go down. She advanced, breath sharp, boots pounding. Then, Bishop disappeared behind the van again. When she rounded the corner, he was gone. The laptop was still there. Upload, 99.3%. She lunged for it. But the screen blinked red. Voice confirmation required to cancel transmission. Michelle froze. Bishop's voice. That's what it wanted. Marcus's voice crackled in her ear. If you have access to the laptop, I can override the voice lock, but I need 30 seconds. Do it, she whispered. Suddenly, bang. Bishop returned, firing from behind a post. The laptop sparked. No. Michelle dove over it, shielding it with her body. More gunfire. Then, silence. She looked up. Bishop had fled again. The laptop still glowed. Marcus's voice came through. Done. Upload corrupted. Network ghosted. Michelle let out a deep breath. The war was postponed. But it wasn't over. An hour later, inside a secured Pentagon debrief room, Michelle sat at a long table. Max lay curled at her feet, sleeping soundly. Marcus sat across from her, exhausted but grinning. You just stopped a digital false flag that could have triggered civil war, he said. How's that feel? Michelle didn't smile. He's still out there. And now he's angry. Let him be, Marcus replied. Next time, we'll be ready. But before Michelle could answer, the monitor on the wall blinked on. Unscheduled transmission. It wasn't from Bishop. It was from inside the Pentagon. A secure line. A shadow profile. One word appeared on the screen. Checkmate. Michelle stood slowly. Her voice was steady. Give me a list of everyone with level 7 clearance. Inside the steel-walled debriefing room, the single word checkmate pulsed on the screen like a heartbeat. Michelle stared at it, unmoving, her reflection mirrored in the polished tabletop. Marcus stood up slowly, his face pale. That wasn't from Bishop. No, Michelle said. That was from inside. Agent Field stepped into the room just as the lights flickered overhead. Ma'am, we just lost remote access to the DoD's Level 7 intel servers. Michelle turned sharply, which means whoever sent that message didn't just access the highest level of classified data, they control it. A cold silence settled in the room. Marcus rubbed his temples. We've been so focused on Bishop, we didn't see what was behind him. Michelle nodded. He's not the king on the board. He's the knight. A piece. And whoever's playing the game, Marcus added, just moved into checkmate position. Back in the city, Bishop sat in a dark room lit only by a single red LED light. His wounded shoulder was wrapped tight, blood seeping through the gauze. He stared at a screen showing Michelle's face, caught mid-stride in the tunnel. Jinx stood beside him. She stopped the upload. I know, Bishop said. That's the part one wanted her to do. Jinx frowned. You wanted her to stop it? He turned toward her, eyes cold. Operation Truth was never about going public. It was about drawing her out, making her believe she had control again, making her comfortable. He walked toward the wall, where a massive diagram was pinned with strings and pictures. Pentagon staff, senators, high-ranking generals. And in the center, Michelle Thompson. She's our signal. When she moves, we know who else does. She's the last patriot who still thinks the system works. He circled one picture. General Peterson, Joint Chiefs Liaison. Send the next message, Bishop ordered. Time to test the generals. At Kilo Bravo, Michelle and her team were already packing for another relocation. Everything had changed. If someone inside the Pentagon had level 7 clearance and was supporting Bishop's campaign, then this wasn't just about information warfare anymore. This was a coordinated coup attempt. Field stepped forward with a tablet. Ma'am, here's the list you asked for. Every active duty official with level 7 clearance. She scrolled through it quickly. Dozens of names. But one stood out. General Malcolm Peterson. Decorated. Clean record. Publicly respected. But something didn't sit right. Pull his travel logs, she ordered. and cross-reference them with our breach timelines. Marcus leaned over the table. He visited Langley 2 days before the first safe house was hit. Coincidence? Michelle's jaw clenched. There are no coincidences anymore. She tapped her earpiece. Activate Ghost Watch protocol. Silent surveillance on Peterson. We follow every meeting, every call, every coffee break. And I want to know what color socks he wore this morning. 2 days later, the surveillance paid off. Peterson took a meeting in a private room at the Willard Hotel in D.C. No staff, no notes, no calendar entry. Michelle watched from a rooftop across the street through a high-powered scope. Inside the room, Peterson wasn't alone. A man with a limp, gray hair, a chestnut tattoo behind his ear. Michelle's breath caught. Bishop's not hiding anymore, she muttered. Marcus's voice came through her earpiece. We record, or we move. Michelle stared down the scope, and for the first time, she saw something on Peterson's face she hadn't expected. Regret. She whispered, we move. An hour later, Michelle waited in the basement garage of the hotel. The shadows danced across the concrete floor, and Max sat alert at her feet, ears perked. The elevator dinged. Peterson stepped out alone. Michelle moved from the shadows, blocking his path. He didn't flinch. General Thompson, he said flatly. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, she replied. He sighed. You're not going to understand this, Michelle. Not yet. But it's already too late to stop it. You're helping him. Bishop. What? Peterson's eyes drifted downward. I believed in the system. Until I saw what it became. Secrets within secrets. Civilians dying for corporate deals. Peace traded for profit. Michelle stepped closer, voice low and controlled. So you decided to burn it all down? I decided, Peterson said, that the world needs a reset. Bishop is the one who will deliver it. I just make sure the pieces fall in line. People will die. They already are. We're just ending the slow bleed. Michelle's eyes narrowed. Where's the next move coming from? Peterson didn't answer. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A live feed showed a military convoy stopped in Virginia. The drivers were unconscious. Crates of weapons, missing. Michelle turned the phone toward him. Those weapons were redirected using your clearance. You still think this ends clean? Peterson's face paled. I didn't authorize that. Bishop said. You gave him the keys, she interrupted. He didn't need your permission after that. Sirens echoed in the distance. Michelle stepped back. This isn't patriotism, she said. It's treason. And then she walked away, Max trotting beside her. Behind her, Peterson slumped against a pillar, the weight of his choice finally sinking in. That night, Michelle, Marcus, and Fields regrouped in a safe apartment above a bakery in Alexandria. The walls were lined with screens and maps. One red dot blinked steadily on the eastern seaboard. Bishop's final play is coming, Marcus said. Everything he's done, it's led to this. Fields tapped a screen. We just intercepted chatter from a Shadow Guard relay. Something about a Black Star protocol. Michelle's blood ran cold. That's a ghost operation. Decommissioned after a failed nuclear transport drill. It was buried for a reason. Marcus frowned. What kind of drill? She looked at them both, deadly serious. It wasn't a drill. It was a trap. One rigged with enough explosive power to wipe out half a coast. It was never supposed to exist again. Then why is Bishop after it now? Fields asked. Michelle turned toward the screen, jaw clenched. Because he doesn't want to just ruin my name anymore. He wants to erase it. Lightning tore across the Virginia night sky like cracks in black marble. Rain came down in sheets, washing the interstate in silver and shadow. Beneath it all, 3 unmarked military trucks moved at a steady, deliberate pace down an empty stretch of road outside Norfolk Naval Base. Each truck bore no insignia, no lights, no license plates. Inside the lead vehicle sat a single object, a steel briefcase, locked with biometric sensors. Black Star Protocol. Back in Alexandria, General Thompson stood in front of a digital wall glowing with satellite feeds and infrared overlays. Max lay at her feet, restless. Marcus tapped his screen. Convoy pinged just outside Norfolk. Deep encrypted chatter on Shadow Guard channels. They're moving something with heavy escort and zero paper trail. Fields looked up from his notes. If that's the Black Star case, we're looking at one of the most dangerous rogue assets in American history. Michelle stared at the blinking dot on the screen. It's not just the weapon, she said. It's the story. Bishop doesn't need to use the case. He just needs the threat. He leaks its location, blames me for stealing it, and boom. Congressional panic, military lockdown, trust destroyed overnight. And the minute we try to deny it, Marcus said grimly, we look guilty. Michelle nodded. We can't let that convoy reach its destination. We intercept it before it vanishes. They moved fast. Michelle, Marcus, and a lean six-man team boarded a blacked-out transport chopper and were airborne in under 20 minutes. No flight plan. No comms. Ghost mode. Marcus handed her a headset. You're sure about this? If we breach this convoy and you're wrong, it's your career, your freedom. Michelle tightened the strap on her vest. I'm not here to save my name, she said. I'm here to stop a war. Below, the three-truck convoy rolled into the entrance of a long-forgotten Cold War submarine silo hidden beneath a shuttered naval base. Inside the old base, Bishop stood waiting, arms behind his back. Jinx stood nearby, her expression unreadable. Status? Bishop asked. They'll be here in 20, Jinx replied. She's not going to let this go. She can't afford to, he said, walking toward the massive steel vault at the back of the chamber. Which is exactly why she'll walk into this one. He turned to a technician. Activate the payload chamber. Set countdown lock. No actual detonation, just optics. Let's see how she reacts when the world thinks she's going nuclear. The man hesitated. But if anyone else sees this, they won't, Bishop said, his voice chillingly calm. This is for her. A message. The chopper hovered low over the trees as Michelle and her team rappelled down onto the outer ring of the abandoned naval base. Rain lashed across their faces as they moved in silence through the broken fencing and overgrown brush. Max padded quietly beside Michelle, trained, focused. They found the convoy trucks parked beside the rusted doors of the silo entrance. Empty. Something's wrong, Marcus whispered. Too clean. Too obvious. Michelle approached the edge of the steel vault. And then she saw it. A red LED light blinking above the vault door. Counting down. 12 minutes and 9 seconds. Marcus swore under his breath. That's not a bomb timer. That's a live broadcast trigger. This whole thing's set to go public the second that hits 0. Michelle turned to the team. We go in. Fast. Hard. We end this now. Inside the vault, Bishop watched them descend through the security cameras. He smiled. You see, he said to no one in particular. She never disappoints. He tapped a key on a nearby console and released the defense drones. As Michelle's team entered the chamber, 2 sleek, quad-legged drones dropped from the ceiling. Move, she shouted, diving behind a control panel as the drones opened fire with suppressed rounds. Marcus returned fire, shooting the optics out of one of the machines. The other lunged at Max. Michelle didn't hesitate. She slid across the floor, tackling the drone mid-leap and unloading her weapon into its underbelly. Sparks flew. It dropped in a lifeless heap. Max barked and pressed his body against her protectively. Good boy, she whispered, breath ragged. The red timer now blinked faster. For minutes and 51 seconds. Fields yelled, we can't shut it down from here. It's being mirrored from an external node. Michelle's eyes darted across the control center. And then she saw it, tucked behind a steel panel. A secondary uplink. Marcus ran over and ripped the panel off. Old satellite modem, analog fallback. I can fry it, but I need 30 seconds of no fire. Michelle turned to her team. Give him 30 seconds. Gunfire erupted again as 2 more drones dropped into the room. Michelle grabbed a high-powered rifle from a fallen guard and took position. Bang. Bang. 1 drone down. Bang. Another disabled, just inches from Marcus. He yanked the uplink cable, slammed a battery into a custom scrambler, and hit the trigger. BZZZZZZZZT. The screen above them flickered. The countdown paused, then stopped. Upload failed. A beat of silence filled the room. They'd done it. But just then, a slow clap echoed from the catwalk above. Bishop, clapping, smiling. Well played, General. Michelle raised her weapon. You're done. Oh, I don't think so, he said calmly. Because while you were busy here, he pulled a phone from his coat, tapped the screen. A new video played. Live from the Capitol, mass evacuation in progress. A massive crowd. Emergency sirens. Panic. Michelle stared at the screen. What did you do? Bishop smiled. I didn't do anything. I just whispered in the right ear. The video may be fake, but the fear? The fear is real. And fear moves armies. Why? She asked, voice trembling with fury. What's the end game? He stepped closer, just out of reach. Collapse. So the right people can rebuild it. Michelle's finger hovered over the trigger. But Bishop raised both hands. No use shooting me, General. I've already won. Then he stepped backward and fell off the ledge. Michelle sprinted forward, looked over, but there was no body, no splash, no sound. He was gone. Later, back in Alexandria, Michelle sat quietly beside Max, her uniform jacket folded across her lap. Marcus stood in the doorway. We contained the video. Managed to convince the media it was a drill. But Bishop? Ghost, she said softly. Marcus nodded. But we stopped Black Star. And we exposed Peterson. That's not nothing. No, Michelle said. But the game's not over. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the DC skyline. I need to speak to the president. About what? Marcus asked. She turned, eyes sharp as steel. Shadow Guard was just the start. To be continued. The final battle's coming. The White House Situation Room was colder than Michelle remembered. Screens lined the walls, showing everything from satellite scans to military readiness reports. Joint Chiefs of Staff sat in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable, every eye fixed on her. President Elaine Carter stood near the central table, arms crossed. She didn't blink as she said, "Tell me again, in your own words, what you think Shadow Guard is planning next." Michelle didn't hesitate. Black Star was a distraction. Bishop wanted us to think the threat was the weapon, but it was never about detonation. It was about perception. He faked a domestic attack order, forced mass panic, triggered lockdown drills, and exposed how fragile the trust between military command and civilians really is. He doesn't need to pull the trigger, just make us believe someone else might. General Peterson sat across the room, pale, silent, no longer in uniform, under house arrest, but watching, listening. Michelle glanced around. Shadow Guard isn't a mercenary unit anymore. It's a movement, and it has support inside this building, maybe even in this room. Gasps. One of the Joint Chiefs shifted uncomfortably. Another folded his arms. The president didn't react. What do you propose, General? Michelle took a breath. Give me full operational clearance. I don't want to go through the chain. I want a direct line. I need to find Bishop before he makes his final move, and I want to do it my way. The president studied her for a long, tense moment, then nodded once. You have it. 3 hours later, Michelle and Marcus stood in a hidden command bunker 80 feet beneath Fort Belvoir. Every screen in the room was black, until one blinked on with a message. Trace, 001B, live node detected. Marcus leaned in. He's active again. Same pattern, same network signature. But this time, it's not coming from Virginia or DC. Michelle narrowed her eyes. Where? Marcus hesitated. Chicago. Fields appeared beside them with a file. And not just anywhere in Chicago. He's operating from under the Federal Reserve branch tower. Michelle looked up, stunned. That's not a safe house. That's a signal tower. He's planning to send a broadcast again. No, Marcus said slowly, fingers flying over the keyboard. Not a broadcast. He tapped the screen. An override. Data spilled across the monitors. Military databases. Civilian internet providers. Voting records. Financial data. Michelle's eyes widened. He's going after our entire digital infrastructure. Fields swore. If he gets full access, he could wipe bank accounts, crash election servers, erase people from the system. Or rewrite it all, Michelle whispered. A bloodless coup. Midnight. Michelle and her team landed just outside Chicago in a black VTOL aircraft. The sky was lit only by flashes of distant lightning. She suited up in silence. Tactical gear. Sidearm. Reinforced vest. No name tag. Just a patch. 3 stars. Marcus briefed the team. Bishop's signal is bouncing through 3 relay points in the city. We hit all of them. Same time. If we're too slow, he ghosts again. Fields checked his weapon. We'll hit the West Tower. You take the core. If he's there, we end it tonight. Michelle nodded once. She turned to Max, who sat at her side wearing his custom armored vest. The dog looked up at her, alert, calm, ready. Let's go, she said. They descended into the substructure of the Federal Reserve Tower, through maintenance tunnels long forgotten. Steam hissed from overhead pipes. Rats scurried past their boots. The signal grew stronger with every step. Finally, they reached a steel door. Cold. Reinforced. Michelle placed a sensor on the keypad. It beeped once. Active access card just used, Marcus said in her earpiece. He's inside. Alone. I'm reading only one heat signature. Michelle drew her weapon. The door opened. Inside was a massive circular room filled with blinking servers and glowing screens. In the center, standing with his hands behind his back, was Bishop. He turned slowly. Calm. Collected. General, he said softly. You made it. Michelle kept her weapon aimed. This ends now. I agree, Bishop said. He stepped aside. Behind him, on the largest screen, was a code. An algorithm running live. I call it Protocol 0. It's not just a virus. It's a rewrite. Everything digital, reset. A clean slate. Michelle stepped closer. And who decides what the new system looks like? She asked. He smiled. People like you. People like me. She stared at him, then lowered her weapon slightly. Why do all this? You were one of us. A leader. Why turn against everything you built? Bishop's expression darkened. Because I saw what it was built on. Lies. Greed. Control. I tried to fix it from the inside. They shut me out. Branded me a traitor. So I became the thing they feared. You became a terrorist, she corrected. No, he said, voice low. I became honest. Silence. Then, Michelle fired. The bullet struck the server behind Bishop. Sparks flew. He flinched, but didn't move. She fired again, another server fried. And no, he shouted, lunging forward. Michelle tackled him hard to the ground, pinning his arm behind his back. Override the program. Now. He laughed. I can't. You're lying. No. I built it to be autonomous. You can't stop it. Michelle grabbed his arm. But you can. She pulled out a knife and slid the flat edge under his watch. A disguised biometric sensor. She pressed it to the screen. Protocol 0, terminated. Authorization, Bishop. Everything froze. The screens went black. Bishop screamed in rage, thrashing beneath her. But it was done. Later, as sunrise painted the Chicago skyline in gold, Michelle stood on the rooftop of the tower. Max sat beside her, wind rustling through his fur. Fields approached. He's in custody. DOD is handling the rest. Shadowguard Communications just dropped off the map. It's over. Michelle didn't smile. Until the next one. Marcus joined them, holding out a sealed file. What's this? She asked. He tapped it. Pentagon wants you to review this. They're offering you the director role at Homeland Command. She took it slowly. Read the label. Confidential. National Command Realignment Initiative. Michelle stared out at the city. Tell them I'll think about it. She looked down at Max, who thumped his tail once. Then she whispered, but next time, they better be ready for my rules. It had been 6 weeks since the night in Chicago. 6 weeks since Protocol 0 had been terminated with seconds to spare. Since Bishop had been taken into deep federal custody, bound in restraints, confined in a classified black site that didn't officially exist. But for General Michelle Thompson, the victory hadn't tasted sweet. It hadn't come with cheers or medals or grand speeches. No newspaper headlines. No parades. The public never learned how close they'd come to the edge. The system had quietly closed ranks, classified the entire operation, wiped the digital footprints, and labeled it preventive threat containment. But Michelle remembered. Every face. Every second. Every bullet. She stood on the lawn behind her Maryland home now. Peaceful, green, quiet. The golden morning light filtered through the trees as Max chased a squirrel across the grass, tail wagging like nothing had ever happened. She took a sip of coffee, breathing in the moment. It almost felt normal. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A text. Final hearing today. Room 3B. He requested you. Bishop. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then pocketed the phone. Later that morning, deep beneath the Pentagon in a secure chamber known only as Room 3B, Michelle entered alone. The room was cold, silent, and windowless. At the center sat a steel chair, surrounded by a circular array of one-way mirrors. And in that chair, Bishop. No shackles. No guards. Just him, wearing gray prison fatigues, eyes alert, but no longer smug. She stepped in and stopped 10 feet from him. You asked for me. He smiled faintly. Of course I did. I wanted to see the future. She didn't reply. You know, he continued, you surprised me. I didn't think you'd go as far as you did. Risk your name. Break protocol. Walk away from everything you'd built, just to stop me. Michelle tilted her head slightly. That's the difference between us. I don't fight for systems. I fight for people. Bishop leaned back. And yet, here we are. The system's still standing. Me still breathing. You still answering to the same flags and shadows that let this happen. Michelle took one step closer. That's changing. He raised an eyebrow. Oh. She reached into her jacket and tossed a folder onto the table. National Command Realignment Initiative. You lost, Bishop, she said. But we listened. The problem wasn't your message. It was your methods. You wanted to burn it all down. I'm going to rebuild it the right way. He looked at the folder, then up at her. They gave you control? She nodded. Total oversight. Joint military and civilian restructure. I report to the people now. Not just the chain. He gave a soft laugh. They gave the girl from Baltimore the keys to the kingdom. Michelle leaned in. No. They gave a black woman, a soldier, and a survivor the power to protect this country from the inside out. That's what scares you most. For the first time, Bishop didn't smile. He looked away. Defeated. Michelle stood straight. This is the last time we speak. You'll never see another screen, signal, or sky again. She turned to walk away. General, he called after her. What if I was right? She paused, then said, without turning around. Then I'll be the one to prove it. Weeks passed. General Michelle Thompson was sworn in as Director of Homeland Command in a private ceremony with only 2 witnesses, President Carter and a retired veteran in a wheelchair who had once taught Michelle how to disassemble an M4 blindfolded. No media, no photo ops, just purpose. Her first order of business was declassifying the Shadow Guard operation. The public had the right to know what almost happened, who had tried to divide them, who had been willing to rebuild democracy on a mountain of lies. Her second order was forming a new civilian military oversight committee, one that would include mothers, teachers, truck drivers, data scientists, veterans, and yes, even former protesters. Real people, not just officials. The press called it bold. Her enemies called it dangerous. Michelle called it necessary. One afternoon, as summer rolled in, she returned home from D.C. early. Max was waiting at the door, tail wagging, a sock in his mouth he wasn't supposed to have. She laughed. Give me that, you little thief. He ran. She chased. And for the first time in a long, long while, Michelle Thompson felt something she hadn't in years. Peace. She stood in her backyard, watching the sunset. Max curled at her feet. Not a single siren. Not a single scream. Just birds in the trees and the wind in the grass. Her phone buzzed again. But this time, she let it ring. Because she had done it. She had survived the system. And now she was changing it.